Hello everyone and welcome to the Planning Game Podcast, your weekly podcast for real world planning solutions to real world planning problems. My name's John McDermott from Town Planning Expert. Let's get right into it. Okay, so this is sort of episode 3 of what I'm calling the COVID Chronicles, the bit of podcast that we recorded during the COVID-19 epidemic. And joining me today for the planning game is a good friend, a good colleague, an all-round nice person. Everyone welcome Emma Morby.
Hi, hello, thank you very much, John. That's a lovely warm welcome.
That's a welcome. That's about as warm a welcome as I give, to be fair. Emma is a good colleague of mine, a really good friend. She's one of my fellow mentors on the boot camps that we do. And we've been working together for an awful long time now, haven't we, in reality?
Yeah, we have. Yeah, doing a variety of different things as well, kind of supporting different parts of our business. Which it's been quite nice because it gives us a bit of diversity, really, in what we're doing.
Oh, absolutely. So, Emma, let's hear your story then. Tell us what got you into property, what you're doing, the businesses you've run, because you've had a really diverse, again, another person who's had an insanely diverse career. So tell us where it all started and where it's gone.
Well, for those of you that know me, who are listening to this, will know that, I like my gin and tonic. So John did offer me a gin and tonic today to sit down and have a drink during this, but I've chosen not to. Otherwise, you might have heard me slur once or twice. I suppose my journey started quite young. I was 19 and I owned 4 successful beauty salons in the financial district in London. At the time, I probably didn't realise how much of a gold mine they were. We're going back quite a number of years now. But what it made me realise was from the age of 16 to 19 that I suppose I was unemployable. I was great to be employed, but I couldn't be managed very well. I think that would be the word I'd use. So left alone, I could achieve great things, but with most PAYE jobs, you have somebody looking over your shoulder telling you what to do and where to stand and who to contact. And I really struggled with that. I think they call it authority.
Yes, they call it authority.
So I very quickly found my feet in the world of being a business owner. And I suppose I fell into the category of an entrepreneur, but I didn't realise it at the time. At 21, I sold my salons. And if I'm honest, the reason I sold them was because it was encroaching on my social life. Mm-hmm. So all my mates were going out and doing stuff and, I wasn't. So we sold it. And I'd like to say that I had a very good head on my shoulders and ploughed all that money into property. But in reality, I went on 14 holidays, bought a brand new convertible car and various other things. Spent it all in a year, basically. And then decided what I wanted to do. So I went back into a PAYE job and I worked for Manpower and Recruitment. Mm-hmm. I very quickly climbed the ranks with Manpower in their temporary desk and then permanent desk and then a trainer. Then I had my first child and decided I didn't want to work the hours anymore. Now, all along, I was working in and around property. So I worked for numerous estate agents alongside working for Manpower. And property was kind of always my goal and my dream. I suppose it's where my passion lied. And then in 2005, I was talking to a good estate agent friend of mine who said, it's really hard to get a good inventory company who are reliable, who are qualified. And I thought, well, that sounds easy enough. So I started another business, being a mum of one, started another business, and then fast forward now, 13 years later, I'm running, or I own, the National Inventory Company, which is a successful inventory company that operates across the UK. We've done thousands of reports. We have a 98% success rate on court decisions that go in. So basically, when a tenant argues over the deposit, we have a 98% success rate. All of the team are qualified. We also deliver compliance. So my team are trained to deliver residential fire risk assessments, Legionella assessments, HHSRS assessments, and smoke and gas testing of all smoke and carbon monoxide alarms. So we are one of the most advanced inventory companies in the country, currently in the UK. And believe it or not, although we're advanced, we're not the most expensive. We're kind of averagely priced because I want it to be affordable for every landlord, really. So that's how my property journey started. It was kind of working in and around inventories. I got my ALA qualification, so I'm actually a qualified lettings agent. I still hold my qualification now. I don't practice in it, but I educate the letting agents that I work with as part of the National Inventory Company. I run often training courses and events. I educate landlords. So I'm still very much active in it. And I narrowly missed to be a board member on ALA last year.
Would you want to be?
Well, it would have been, the board members, there's 12 of them in total, and it would have been nice because I could have kind of shaped the future, but not as a letting agent, as an external view. I understand the lettings industry, I understand the compliance, I'm trained in it, but I also understand the inventory industry, and I also understand the property industry, from development all the way through to sort of the figures side of things. So I thought it'd be nice to have somebody sat on the board who's got a different agenda, who can shape the market. But unfortunately, I missed that out narrowly, but missed it. And then a number of years ago, I decided to go into sort of property development, and I bumbled around probably for a good couple of years, not really having any focus or direction. Not really knowing what I wanted to do. So I jumped from from office to residential to new builds. And actually, it wasn't really until I started going, funnily enough, on one of your workshops, John, that I really honed down my skills in what I love, which is the heritage buildings. And about 2 years ago, I started looking at heritage buildings. Obviously got the training and guidance support from you around the heritage side of things. And that's sort of where my life has really flourished, if I'm honest, because most people who'll know me and you know that we work together to create moments in history where we can bring back beautiful old buildings. And we've got some of the most spectacular buildings on our books at the moment for conversion. And I would imagine we're going to have a few more added this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's the thing, isn't it? This whole, we're going to do that despite COVID-19, aren't we? Or in spite of COVID-19, we're not going to let this virus stop anything, especially as these buildings aren't going anywhere. Absolutely, and I suppose I'm very lucky that I've been in and around the property industry and hold enough qualifications now to understand property markets, rental markets. I work with some of the largest letting agents in the country, so I know when trends come in. I like to educate myself, so I often follow how the markets are going, what we'd expect, and we're not going to. I don't foresee us having a 2008 crash, especially not in property. Because we're in a totally different position now as to what we were, back then. We're actually being supported. The government is supporting, employees are being supported, so they're remaining in work. Mortgages are being put on hold temporarily, but they will restart back up again. Businesses are being supported. And whereas
in 2008, the banks were very unsupportive. It's a totally different view now in the middle of COVID-19. Now, don't get me wrong, I think property will go down. And I think you have to be knowledgeable enough to be able to buy property at the right price, to be able to accept the fact that it's going to go down, the values are going to go down, and that they may stay down for a period of time, maybe 12 or 18 months. And the one thing that I've learned is that everything that I price up is always priced up on worst case disaster scenario. So that I know that if we as a company need to exit, we have multiple different exit avenues. We can sell, we can retain, we can rent. We could do an Airbnb if we need to. And I'm very fortunate that I hold qualifications in the ability to be able to do all of this, carry out the legislation, rent if we need to. I can literally set it all up and get it into a rental portfolio.
Yeah. And that kind of brings us on to, I know what is one of your passions, which is regulation. Or moreover, I'm going to put it this way, getting people to get it right. Because that neatly brings us on to something you've invested a lot of time and money and effort into, which is Let Shield.
Yes.
So tell us about Let Shield, because when you told me about Let Shield, I looked at it and went, why don't I know about this? Why isn't every landlord signed up to this? Why isn't every letting agent signed up to this? Why isn't every council signed up to this product? So tell us about Let Shield. So
Let Shield was an idea of mine that was we created about 18 months ago. And as you heard me mention earlier, my team are all qualified to carry out compliance training or compliance work. And it dawned on me that landlords, like myself and everyone else in the country that's a landlord, are getting squeezed constantly, and their profit margins are getting less and less. And the legislation is getting tighter and tighter. So they are more at risk of the large fines that are out there. And when I say large, I'm talking, you might get a £15,000 fine, but the compensation that you have to pay a tenant could be another £15,000. It could be a year's worth of rent. So, the risk is quite huge now for a landlord to make what we call a simple mistake. And some of these mistakes are so easy, but because you don't know the legislation, you don't realise you're making the mistake. Yeah. So I made the decision that I was going to create a product which would basically train every landlord, every letting agent, every local authority quickly and from the comfort of their own home or their office in the legalities, the risks, and the ability to carry out risk assessments on these properties around 5 areas of compliance. And that's HHSRS, fire risk assessments, Legionella assessments, smoke and gas testing, and interim inspections. Now, obviously, we've been doing it for years in-house, so we've had to create a completely different package externally. And my main aim really was to get it out, or is still to get it out to as many landlords in the UK as possible. Because at the moment, they're outsourcing, Legionella risk assessments, and they're outsourcing fire risk assessments. And they're not doing smoke and gas testing properly. They're just doing a push button test, which leaves them exposed. So my aim was to create this product and to say to landlords, all of this training is available for you. And we'll even give you a software tool which will give you a step-by-step guide, a system of answers and photograph and video capability. It will create your risk assessment. It'll even go as far as to tell you when you are in breach and what you need to do to remedy the breach. So that when your tenant potentially puts a claim in against you, or the local housing officer comes out and investigates a claim, you will be able to say, look, when the tenant first moved in, I have a clear recorded copy of how the property was, and it was compliant. And they're one of the most important documents, because that would stop your £30,000 fine or your £15,000 fine.
And that's quite a big, end of the day, that's a big message, isn't it? And that's part of the why of the software, is to save landlords the expense of a claim. So it's just essentially to put a stop to the litigative nature of housing compliance that has started to rear its ugly head. I mean, if only planning had a similar solution, then applicants simply wouldn't make some of the cardinal mistakes that they do in making planning applications, and every application would just get pushed through because it was effectively fine.
Mm.
I mean, in terms of, and we've talked about Let's Shield and how I think you should expand it. I think now is an amazing time to be trying to reach out and still to reach out to councils and landlords and estate agents, etc. Because let's face it, the estate agents at the moment, they probably don't have anything to do. So to look at this software in detail actually might give them something to do, because they might be looking at, if they're letting agents, getting some of the compliance checks done now whilst everything is quiet. Clients can't go into property, but they can start to gear up their machines. Equally, local councils, local housing associations, etc., will be on a point where they can't move anyone into new property. They can't move people around, so they're having to hold people in isolation, which gives them capacity. And it might be a good a time as any to start to reach out, and almost on the point of view of, we know COVID's an issue, we know you're struggling with that, but let's try and take some other part of your problem away. Let's try and essentially deal with another part of the regulation for you.
Well, a lot of people now, in their downtime, landlords, letting agents, their team are at home, the local authority, this is the point where they can go through the training. The training is detailed. I'm not going to say it's a walk in the park. It is detailed. You're going to become capable to assess your own properties, and a document that's produced that will stand up in a court of law. That those are important measures as a landlord or a letting agent that you can take now to train your team, so that when you come out of this in sort of 2-3 months time, as a landlord, you can say, right, from now on, I'm going to go out and I'm going to manage my own properties. And we have a sliding fee scale for depending what it is. So one property for a period of 12 months is £99 plus VAT. And that covers everything. So if you have a tenant move in and out twice in that year, you just do 2 sets of assessments. It's not as if we're limiting to, where you can only do 1 assessment a year. You've got 4 interim assessments that go through.
And compared to how much that would cost to outsource, because of course we always talk about time. Yeah. So how much is £99 compared to an outsource?
So if you pick an average Legionella assessment, I'm going to pick, I don't know, the home counties, let's say, not London because it's extortionate, but let's say the home counties, you'd be looking at between £75 and £90 just for a Legionella assessment. No training, just a guy going out once, doing that assessment for you, and then he goes out and does it every time your tenant changes. Okay. Or a change happens in the property. Up north, it can be as low as 55 just for one of those services. A residential fire risk assessment, we are one of the only companies in the country that offer this. And so you would probably have to come to us directly. If you came to us directly and booked one, we would charge you, depending on the size of the property, anything from £120 to £225.
Right. So saving time, saving money, saving effort, and bringing everything back in-house, which sounds fantastic. So at the end, we'll deal with how people can get hold of you, but this is the planning game. So let's move off Let's Shield and let's talk about, I'm going to call it your coup de grace, which is, and it gives me tingles every time I say it, Heritage England.
Yes. Now that was an achievement, to say the least.
We talk about property branding. And to give people an idea, to give those who are listening from outside of the country, because we do have listeners from outside of the country, there are 2 or 3 national heritage amenity bodies in the UK. There's English Heritage, who control some of the heritage properties in the UK. Historic England, who are the sort of key holders for listed buildings, etc. The National Trust, who are govern the other sort of heritage properties in the UK. So they're either owned by English Heritage or the National Trust. And then we sweep in and tread where angels fear to go and say, well, why hasn't anyone ever called their development company Heritage England?
Yeah, it was a leap, that's for sure. When we applied for it, there was a moment where you hold your breath, and it went into Companies House, and Companies House came back and said, oh, yeah, no, I'm afraid that has to be under review. And we thought, yeah, okay, fair enough, we won't be getting that. And then Companies House come back and said, okay, so we've reviewed it, and now it's got to go directly to the Crown for sign-off. And I thought, oh, okay. Yeah, the chances of us getting that are pretty slim then, but we'll carry on. So we pushed on, and then about eight or 9 days later, we got confirmation that they had granted Heritage England as a company name. And you have to meet certain criteria to even have that as a company name, basically, which we were very fortunate that we hit. And you know, this company, it's not just your traditional development company. A lot of people hear the word development and think new builds, conversion of flats. We're not like that. You know, we will specialize in some of the most oldest historic buildings in the UK, and bring them back to life, give them a purpose, whether that's for a commercial use or a residential use. So if anyone's out there now listening thinking, oh yeah, I've got a 16th century castle on my land and I've no idea what to do with it, you know, you should get in touch with us, and you know, we can give you tips and pointers. Don't get me wrong, it is a bit of a minefield if you don't know what you're doing, but at the same time, you know, a lot of these buildings sit within people's grounds and their gardens, and they just go to rack and ruin. You know, churches are quite a popular one where we see them. You know, we don't tend to specialize in churches, but you know, they often become ruins because they're no longer used and nobody wants the upkeep of them. You know, buildings in the sea.
That's the thing, isn't it? A heritage building has to have life inside of it. It has to have maintenance. It has to breathe. It has to have activity, because if it doesn't, especially in the buildings that we've looked at together, it dies. And it's a very slow and painful death. The Raglan Gatehouse, which is currently in for planning and is a spectacular building, has died an incredibly slow and painful death over the course of, from what I can track, 50 years of not being used and being misused and being abused and everything going on with it. And that's the thing with heritage buildings, isn't it? It's you have to know what you're doing with them, but also you have to try and breathe life back into them quickly. And that's where the planning system really does help you insofar as, because as long as you're doing the right thing, you have to bring the building back into life. You have to bring the focus of that building back to preservation. And I think that's the mistake most make, isn't it? Is that they forget the preservation solution. They always go for, it's heritage building, so let's just try and knock it down, or let's remove it, or let's bash it so it's so badly damaged we can't do anything else with it. I mean, that's the thing. That was the thing we found in Raglan's history, wasn't it? That they've made 3 attempts to get listed building consent for demolition.
Yeah.
And on 3 attempts, they've been told, no, no, No,
And
definitely not.
I think a lot of the historic properties that we look at have fallen into such a state of disrepair that the volume of money to bring them back into, well, actually, to even be watertight, if I'm honest, the volume of money required is a lot. So your profit margins, if you're doing residential developments, aren't as high as what they would be if you built a bunch of new builds on a brownfield site. But the difference is you're restoring a building that's been there for probably 300 years and will remain there for another 300 years. And I know that our passion is very much about creating a legacy. So our names will be forever embedded in the history of that building. The barracks is a jewel in our crown, as well as Raglan. And the barracks is one of our larger projects, and it's down in Pembroke Dock. But it's, when we finished, not only would we have given back to society, i.e. people can come and rent, people can come and buy, there will be potentially commercial revenue streams coming in from that site, but there will also be part of us that will always own the freehold. So we will always be in charge of that building, making sure that it's maintained properly, its upkeep is there. Now, that's not a cheap thing. A lot of people buy it and then just think, I'm going to buy a cheap historic building, going to do it all up, and then they get 6 months in and they think, God, this is really expensive. And then when they realise that just the insurance, to give you an example, you'll know this, John, but for the guys who are listening, to give you an example, just the insurance on the barracks, just to insure an empty building, and it's not even watertight, just to insure it for fire cover, or what they call FLEA, which is fire, lightning, flood, that sort of thing. It is £65,000 a year. That's just to insure. So when people come to me and they go, "Oh, I found a really great building. It's a old what was one I had recently? An old castle up in Scotland," and I was like, "Oh, that's beautiful. It's brilliant. That's great." And they were like, "Yeah. And what do you reckon it'll be to insure?" I was like, "I'd imagine about 60 to 80,000 a year, of which their face just hit the floor." And I kind of sort of said to them, those are the bits that nobody tells you about. If you know how to calculate, your planning costs, and you know how to calculate your building costs, and you might add a bit extra because it's a listed building, but nobody tells you the other side of the insurance. And actually, the cost of stone has gone up colossally. Stonemasons are quite expensive at the moment. Rightly so, they've got a mastered skill, but they're a dying art, so they are a commodity to us. We want them. So there's lots of things that people don't always tell you when you start a project with historic value.
And I think that's definitely gonna become one part of Heritage England's offer. One part of Heritage England's business model is the helping developers who have got hold of one of these properties. Maybe they've bought a piece of land with one of these properties on. Maybe they've inherited, as had the guy at Raglan Gatehouse, a heritage building, and they're looking at it going, well, what on earth do I do with this? I think that's very much going to be one of Heritage England's sort of offers going forward, is going to be, right, let's talk about this and consult on this and give advice on, right, what do we do with a building like this, of this type? Because you're right, the property education sector is poorly equipped, I think. It's not fit for purpose yet to deal with this very specialist type of building, and to deal with the level of understanding necessary. People are still working on the common misconception, and I'm sure you hear this too, Emma, that it's only grade 2, that means it's only frontage listed.
Yeah.
Right. And I that it's normally at that point that me as planner, my jaw hits the floor, my head hits a wall, because the wall is now more intelligent than the person talking to me. I go down the line of, that's not what a listing means. The other one that's often quite amusing is I've got an original building in the garden, but because it's not included precisely in the words of the listing, it's not listed. No, it's in the curtilage. Therefore, everything in the curtilage is listed, irrespective of whether it was on the listing or not. And that is one of the biggest misconceptions, I think, in certainly our industry, is what is protectable and what is not. And most people forget the very basic assumption that you protect everything. Down to, in the case of Raglan, down to the ghost of the soldier that shot himself by accident. You know, everything is protectable unless justified otherwise.
I find I get a lot of those. You know, a lot of people, you know, will say to me, oh, "I've got a lovely grade 2 listed manor house. I'm going to put 20 houses in the garden," and you're like, I probably think you're not going to. Let me tell you why. And we tend to have this
setting of the listed building. Yes, absolutely. And there is ways to do it. I mean, understanding, you know, you can make arguments on enabling development. So, you know, the building that we were looking at in I think it was North Wales, wasn't it? Your castle that you're still very much in love with. The one you showed me that was the spookiest place I've ever seen in the history of my life. You know, this is a castle that randomly had sewing machines literally everywhere. I've no idea where they come from. They were just everywhere. Anyway, but there are arguments for what we normally term as enabling development, i.e. we need to erode the setting in order to preserve the building. We need that to do this. We're making that argument at Raglan. But, you know, there is enabling development and then there's inappropriate development. And I think most people have the habit, don't they, of diving straight down the inappropriate development line first without thinking more carefully about what they can and cannot do with a building of this quality.
Yeah, I think there are literally loads of buildings out there that have got, you know, grade 1, grade 2 listings. Some of them are scheduled ancient monuments. You know, they're special in history, and as long as I suppose you have the right guidance and the right people around you to say to you, that is, you know, that's the sort of proposal you can put together and try and gain planning. I think people are still, because the education is so limited around the historical sector, and everyone's been told for years, stay away from it, stay away from it, stay away from it. It's a money pit, stay away from it. I think people have programmed themselves to almost be a bit fearful of it. But in reality, if you have the right knowledge and the right training, or you have the right people to go to get that information from, the right guidance, you know, what you can achieve, you know, some of our, as you know, John, and most of the probably people listening won't know this, but, you know, some of our property developments, even on historic buildings, can be up in the 30% mark.
Can be.
On profit.
Absolutely.
You know?
In the right location, the right building. Absolutely. They can be incredibly lucrative. But you're absolutely right on that guidance. And it's almost a skill of the planner guiding to know when the development is above their pay grade. So, for example, on the barracks, I know full well that development on heritage grounds is miles above my pay grade. It's a scheduled ancient monument. I need a person with the right initials after their name in order to go and talk to CADU, who are the Welsh version of Heritage not Heritage England, Historic England. We're Heritage England. We're gonna get so many hits on the website just by people typing in the wrong thing. That's where we've gone to someone like Nicola, who is a Welsh heritage planner, speaks the language, has both the correct accent and the correct initials after their name, and has done that type of development before, that we can rely on them to argue that heritage arguments that need to be made on a building of that stature. Because, again, there would be architects who would just run with it and try, but the skill of the heritage developer is to know when to stop, isn't it? And when to say, no, I can't do this. I need to reach out and get the relevant experts in order to go and get there.
And we're very lucky to have Nicola on board working with us, but also she understands the financial restraints that a development like this brings. So, where we may be asked to put back, for instance, Welsh slate, there's 48,000 Welsh slate that needs to be put back on the barracks' roof. In reality, Welsh slate is expensive, but there is a Spanish and a Canadian slate which are identical in look, in feel, in touch, and they are 2/3 cheaper than the Welsh slate. So sometimes as developers, we do have to look out for other alternatives that will be as close to its heritage as possible, that isn't going to cost hundreds of thousands of pounds out of the development budget. Because from that budget, we can say, well, if we save £300,000 or £400,000 there on that roof, that money can go towards the restoration of all of the internal doors, and there are other things in the building that have just as much priority as a roof, basically, that we would like to sort of save or recreate. And I think that's the nice thing. If you work with a good heritage consultant, like Nicola, she understands that restraint. She will put forward different proposals. She's got knowledge of different products available on the market. And when she's doing a heritage impact statement, she will be mindful of what we do need to restore, and actually potentially what the costs will be and where we can make cost savings.
Yeah.
So definitely worth, if you're doing bigger projects, definitely worth, a heritage consultant through and through.
Brilliant. So, thank you very much, Emma, for joining me on the planning game. That's been brilliant. So let's deal with this in two halves. If you're a landlord and you're coming up to your compliance checks and you need Let Shield to come and help you along, Emma, how do they get in contact with you on the Let Shield side?
Yes, so if they log on to www.letsshield, so it's got a double S in the middle, letsshield.co.uk, they can watch a short video which explains all about what we do, and then all they need to do is go to packages, landlord tab, and they can sign up there and then. They'll get, as soon as they sign up, they'll get access to all of the training. Like I said, it's video based. And just to give you an idea, if you're a landlord sat there now thinking, I don't think I need that, 1 in 3 rental properties in the UK are not compliant. And currently, there are only 15 letting agents that carry out compliance checks on your behalf.
There you go. So that's the big why there. So letshield.co.uk for landlords interested in that product, go and find out more. And if you're the owner of a Grade 1 listed, absolutely fabulous manor house and you've got no idea what to do with it, shall we say emma@heritageengland.co.uk?
Yep. And I'm happy to give some time and, give some time and some ideas of what we think will be suitable, especially in this time, like John, at the moment, a lot of people will be worried about, quite honestly, keeping the roof over their heads. And so, there's always other alternatives. If you're in a position where you're thinking, I'm going to lose my business and the bank's going to foreclose on me, ring us, ask, because there may be an alternative we can give you that a bank won't give you. Yeah, absolutely. Emma, it's been brilliant. Thank you very much for joining me. Thank you. Okay, guys, that's the end of the podcast for this week. As with all of the COVID Chronicles, I've no idea who I'm interviewing next week, but I will see you, or you'll hear me on the very next time. Stay safe, stay well, and catch the next planning game when next we meet.